Trade tensions between the United States and China take another turn, this time involving the Chinese communications company Huawei. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. But before we get underway, I just want to quickly mention that we are launching a new Heat podcast this week. I will have much more on that later. But first, the latest on the U.S. China trade tensions. The United States is now targeting Huawei, the second largest smartphone producer in the world. Last week, the Trump administration added Huawei to a list that bans it from getting technology from U.S. companies without approval. Now, Google is limiting software that it provides to Huawei, including much of the Android operating system for mobile phones. But there have been some latest developments, and joining us now with the latest is CGTN's Nathan King. Nathan, what can you tell us about this?
Yeah, Anand, thanks. It's a question of hold the front page, because literally less than 24 hours after Google announced the fact that it was going to shut down essentially the Android operating system for Huawei when it came to new phones, and then stop updating it as well, in line with the US Commerce Department order, which essentially went out last week. There's a reprieve. In fact, late-breaking news just before we went on air here on The Heat. The Commerce Department issued a statement. Let me read you part of it and explain it to you as well. The temporary general license, which is what they've just given, grants operators time to make other arrangements and the department space to determine the appropriate long-term measures for Americans and foreign telecommunications providers that currently rely on Huawei equipment for critical services. And it goes on to say, in short, there it is, this license will allow operation to continue for existing Huawei mobile phone users and rural broadband networks. Now, that is a 90-day reprieve, according to this statement that I have in front of me from the Commerce Department. So essentially, we got until the middle of August until what just was announced. Google actually doesn't have to impose it, nor do all these US chip firms. I'm talking about the big ones, Qualcomm, Intel, NVIDIA, that provide a lot of the chips that puts into Huawei's phones. Now, this is so important because, as you know, Huawei, the #2 cell phone maker in the world, basically just behind Samsung, and knocked out Apple, has been expanding across the world. And people like their phones because they have really, really good cameras in there. I was in China and people were laughing at my iPhone camera because they have these amazing new cameras. And you know, it's really interesting, isn't it, how globalized this world is. This decision made here in Washington about a Chinese company reverberated in Europe, where Huawei has a lot of sales, and there was a lot of anger on the streets. Let's have a listen.
I think it is absurd because the phone works well. It's efficient. The Android system is not exclusive on Huawei because many others have it. It's a nonsense operation.
I use Gmail and another application a lot, so it scares me that I won't be able to use them in a few months.
I think it's a real pity because Huawei makes good mobiles for a really good price. And I think it's a real pity if Android really does go through with this, that Huawei can only use the pure Android without Play Store and similar stuff.
Yeah, voices from Italy, Spain, and Germany there. Now, the question is, what happens after this 90-day reprieve? Well, remember, trade talks are still ongoing, or at least there's a standoff. President Xi Jinping and US President Trump will be in Japan for the G20 at the end of June. There seems to be a window of opportunity, isn't there always with these things? But what's really important about this is that now Huawei knows this could happen, and it gives it a bit of breathing space to look out for other suppliers, create indigenous suppliers. There's even talk of its own operating system, Chinese chip makers or Asian chip makers moving into the breach. We'll have to wait and see. But what's really interesting also about this statement is that there is a lot of rural communities here in the United States that rely on Huawei equipment outside the cities because it's cheaper and more efficient over a long area. And they too would have been cut out and had their communications at risk as well. I don't quite know why the Commerce Department announced this on a Thursday and then decided to sort of rescind it for 90 days on a Monday. But hey, I've given up guessing with this administration.